We're in for a fun time at Waco Mammoth National Monument.
Just a bit of Texie dust.
We are headed up to see family, but anytime I'm on the road, I try to find something to do. So today we are at the Waco Mammoth Monument. It is a dig site that was found, a flood many thousands of years ago, and one of the largest numbers of mammoths ever found together. So this should be kind of interesting. I've never seen it. Follow him to the mammoths. I want to see the mammoths. I'm glad you wanted to see the mammoths, Mamaw. It's been a while since we've had an adventure with you.
I'm just going to mention a couple things real quick before we do. First off, when I talk about the first discovery stuff, that happened right over here. We'll be talking about that inside.
Okay.
But beyond that, the big thing going in is no food or drinks inside the building, just because dig site and their worst nightmare is quite literally something spilling, causing damage, destruction of something. I don't want to have to explain to the NPS why something happened when it didn't need to. I don't want you guys to have to deal with them getting cranky over it, let alone my worst nightmare is actually a Dr. Pepper. Because, not so much that it's a soda, don't get me wrong, that's bad, but because we're in Waco and I really don't want to be involved in the headline, Dr. Pepper destroys Mammoth in Waco, Texas, home of Dr. Pepper. It's super awkward for everybody. It's teenagers at the time. Paul Barron and Eddie Buffkin, they were looking along the creek, but oopsies, I mean to do that. That's what happens when there we go. They were looking along the creek bed out there for snakes, that kind of stuff, mostly because Paul Barron's sister lived nearby, and that year she'd had a few copperheads popping out of wood piles earlier than she was used to, and apparently was looking to see, she was worried that her kids were going to get bit, so she asked her brother and his friend to go look and see if they could find any and preemptively deal with them. Whether they were actually looking or just goofing off, I don't know if it really matters. They walked through the creek bed, stumbled over some bones. The bone that they focused on initially was a rounded section that kind of looked like the top or back of a human skull. They thought that might be what it was. Being overly curious teenage boys, they did the only thing I would have guessed they would. Started removing soil from around it and realized very quickly in the process they were horribly wrong. Because the more soil they removed, the less round it was and the longer it was. It ended up being like 3 foot. Took it to Baylor to find out what that meant. Specifically, ended up at the Strecker Museum. David Lintz over there identified the bone in question as a femur of a Colombian mammoth, the leg bone from the hip to knee, meaning the rounded section that looked like skull was the ball joint with a hip socket. Beyond that, might have stopped there if not for the fact that they stressed what else they'd seen, because they described a whole bunch of bones from several animals, including a few different species, and it wasn't just 1 or 2 bones, and that caught the museum's attention, basically. They looked into getting permission from the people that owned the land, got that, came out here, found 16 mammoths out there, thought they were done, started moving that stuff out, and then they found more over here by accident when they started shifting soil they had put over here back into the hole because stuff popped out over this way. They ran out of space and then looked into building a building on site, basically. So in general, as said, there's a number of animals. Mammoth's the most numerous thing, but some of the others include things like outside at one point they found part of an alligator, part of a bison, several ducks, 2 different turtles, and here we found a few more chunks of turtle or tortoise, as well as a saber-toothed catfish and our camel, which I promise I will explain shortly.
Wow, a little bit of everything.
A little bit. Just a little. Also, if you're looking down there, a large male mammoth on this wall for the mural. Wow. Means that is mostly to scale. I will stress it is slightly off because the lights above him on the wall were there first, apparently. And it's cheaper to leave them there and paint underneath. So technically, that's about 4 or 6 inches shorter than it's supposed to be. Plus, just when we find them frozen for the hair color, apparently that's
just to give you size representation.
Frozen, they tend to come in colors like you're thinking about. The reason I say that is because this is quite. Other than that, though, basically, I said, yeah, the big factor. A lot of people, when I mention the rivers, it's like, okay, well, obviously that's what brought them here, but is that what killed them? And it's like, at one point they thought that might be the case. More recently, they've noticed evidence of drought situations and layers and malnutrition evidence on some of the animals, which has brought up things like maybe they came up looking for food and water and didn't find enough, or maybe they did find a water source and in desperation drank from something they shouldn't have, like a toxic algae bloom. We've seen that kind of thing occasionally happen in the Americas with livestock or dogs. We've also seen the last 6-ish years with a group of African elephants in Africa. The problem is, even if it occurred here, I don't know if there's any way of confirming that.
Yeah.
because I've been told that typical direct evidence of toxic water sources is left either in the water source or the soft tissue of the animal, not in the bone structure because it kills too quickly.
Yeah.
So.
I think it would have to be, well, if they just drink some of it, sometimes that's enough to kill them. And so if it doesn't get a chance to get into them.
Might be a little bit problematic, so they decided to go with a different dating method called OSL dating. OSL is the most, maybe at the most, I don't know if it's even that, maybe closer to 30 or 40, but it's one of those ones that's recent. It's very recent. The problem is I've worked here for like 10 years. OSL, great number, OSL. Yeah, OSL is easier than trying to. You can also take a picture of the sign here because it's not.
And all the teeth.
Uh-huh.
Because, like, here at least ours are somewhat articulated, sort of. That stuff there is just jumbled.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm just like, not exactly. I've just been here too long. We found camels quite a few times in the fossil record in the Americas, off and up with mammoths. The weird part isn't finding them, it's that we find them and then just ignore them for some reason. We skip over them, gloss over them, or pretend they just didn't exist for some reason.
It's not cool.
Maybe it's that, I don't know. The thing that's been bugging me over the last little bit is every time I was in a history class, when they talked about animals that were in the Americas, they over-focused on stuff like horses, having been here, got wiped out for some reason, and then brought back to the Americas by the Spanish, which has a direct human connection, don't get me wrong. The Mustang is important. I just find it hilariously ironic that we focus so much on stuff like that and then ignore these guys because, well, she still has a couple of relatives running around in Central and South America. Paleontologists, they're the ones that are basically doing the internships with students from a number of places, colleges or otherwise.
Okay.
Most of them do tend to be going through Baylor in some manner, but not always.
It says it's a replica.
The Colombian mammoth femurs compared to human femurs are...
A tree stump?
Yeah, this was cut down when the building was built. This was in the way, unfortunately.
The mass died off of them.
Initially, as said, they thought that it was the footing thing, but that group has a lot of the individuals that we have on site with malnutrition. There's some other interesting stuff that I remember hearing about that I don't know the accuracy on, like there seems to have been
It seems like they're finding new stuff down there every day. I talked to the park ranger who oversees the operation, and he's like, well, they find new stuff from fish scales to baby teeth to they're putting a new leg together for the dinosaur.
Wow.
Mammoth, sorry.
That is so cool. And it is just beautiful here. Of course, we're freezing today. Just a lot of learning activities for kids. Fossils you can touch. And they are the Colombian mammoths that are found here. Just lots of hands-on for the kiddos. They even have a little dig site where they can come over here and excavate some bone-looking rocks. And here's all the info I'm not smart enough to know. Glad they got a sign. my goodness, Atlas Obscura did not let us down. That was so interesting and cool, and it's a little bit off the beaten path. You have to know where you're going because it's a park. You got to get a little bit out of the city, but that's so cool. I love it when you see like living history, even though it's all dead. But it feels alive because we're here and people are studying it. So I'm just glad we stopped today. Bye.
Hey! Come back, wherever you are!